It's an eerie sight. This is the 1990 blue Chevy Caprice that was used by John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malveaux during their reign of terror in the D.C. area back in 2002. The Beltway snipers hid in the trunk of this car, aimed their weapon out of a carefully carved out hole, and shot and killed 10 people over a 3-week period. The vehicle, along with the boxes of evidence and paperwork used to convict the D.C. snipers, will soon be on display at the National Law Enforcement Museum in Northwest D.C.
The intent of the museum really is to educate the public, inform the public, invite our citizens to understand more about the profession of law enforcement, and literally have a walk-in-the-shoes experience as a law enforcement professional.
Dave Brandt is the executive director of the National Law Enforcement Museum. After nearly 2 decades of planning and fundraising, construction crews are hard at work to meet their October deadline for the grand opening of this 60,000 square foot museum that's being built 3 stories underground.
It's been a long journey. It's all private funds. There's no government funding, all donated through the years. And it was conceived and will be an addition to the memorial, where we have 21,000 plus names of those who've given their lives, but with a different mission, a more current mission to educate, inform, and invite our communities to understand the law enforcement profession.
In addition to creating several interactive exhibits, the museum has curated 20,000 artifacts that have been collected, stored, and are being prepared for exhibit inside a warehouse in Forestville.
We tell the story of all of American law enforcement. So that's federal law enforcement, state, local departments, and so we've tried to make the collection represent that big, complicated story.
Rebecca Looney is the senior director of exhibits and programs.
We have some objects from more famous lawmen, so Elliot Ness's credentials. Some people ask me, was Elliot Ness a real person? And yes, he was. He was a Treasury Department agent, and he fought Prohibition in Chicago, just like the stories say. We have J. Edgar Hoover's personal estate.
Hoover's actual desk and personal belongings while he was the director of the FBI will be on display along with the tarot card that the D.C. snipers left behind at a crime scene to taunt the police.
I do think there's a lot of power to any object. You know, this is why we have museums, because there's a reality to that thing that you don't get from anything else. And a lot of people don't really understand how law enforcement works, how an investigation works. They've seen a lot of things on TV, but one thing you really get to understand as you look at the actual things is how much effort and time and sweat and tears goes into each of these cases and investigations.
The museum will also feature how law enforcement weapons and technology have changed a lot over the years. This is a police-issued musket from 1857. And here's a look at what female police officers used to have to carry back in the day, all while wearing their department-issued skirts and high heels.
Women in the 1960s actually, as part of their uniform, rather than wearing a duty belt, they were given a department-issued purse that had all the same compartments for all the same sorts of gear. So there's a spot for handcuffs, there's a spot for extra magazines for their firearm.
The museum will also feature some of the challenges that corrections officers can face. On display will be a collection of contraband that has been seized from prisoners over the years.
I think the rarest is a pistol made out of paper. And so it's actually created out of paper, it's polished with shoe polish, and then the bullet is made from the end of a pencil.
Did it work?
It did. We actually have the magazine.
While there is plenty of entertainment value, the museum will also feature the darker, more controversial aspects of law enforcement history.
There will be mistakes made, there will be problems evolve. Part of this museum, a key part of our museum, is to host programs where constructive dialogue occurs on how to improve policing for the future.
Eagerly anticipating the grand opening is the former chief of police from Bessemer, Alabama.
Law enforcement is a major component of the greatness of our country. And I think that sometimes they get left out because it's the most visible part of government. It's in the best of times, we show up in the worst of times.
The National Law Enforcement Museum is scheduled to open this fall. I'm Nancy Yamada for State Circle.